In Game Deck, you're either a detective of your own or a pre-made creation. Your job is to unravel digital mysteries for payment and to explore a deeper mystery hidden underneath all that you see and hear. Gameplay and story. Gameplay is limited. It consists of simply looking around on narrow trails, talking to NPCs along the way, gaining skill points and various traits, and then using those skill points to get specific skills on a very small skill tree, but often having those skills be useless in situations where they shouldn't be. Those skills are supposed to open up additional evidence gathering options, but oftentimes it would make sense to be able to use them and you just can't. Once enough evidence has been gathered, then the player can make decent deductions. I say decent deductions because it's possible to jump to a conclusion without much evidence, but that's a poor idea as players are locked into whatever they choose as soon as they choose it. You can't change your mind later on even if you stumble across further clues or evidence. So if you think you're pretty sure and you get it wrong, that means reloading a save and redoing a bunch of stuff, if you want to get it right. Plus, there's no impetus to rush anyway. The game will prompt the player to make a choice when one's absolutely necessary. It does this by prompting a player to come to a conclusion during some relevant NPC's dialogue. At this point, you have to choose. And that's pretty much it. That's the game. There are some exceptions, such as a loot box-laden harvesting minigame, which is a meta-commentary on Facebook games and similar social apps that use loot boxes, but that's not a riveting mechanic, and the satire seems drawn out. On top of that, in this zone and many others, story and gameplay are often melded poorly. In this case, it's about what you can do. The harvesting mechanic can be used to get coins, and someone in the zone wants something. You can also get rather rich by obtaining a certain in-game goal. Yet, donating what you get doesn't have much of an effect on anything, or much of an affect on anyone. So the main thing is just gathering clues and then making choices based on your deductions. However, gathering clues is also often lame. It's a typical click to look and learn style of thing, which is fine, but poor storytelling often means that looking at a thing just comes across as, well, looking at a thing. There's little sense of weight, of mystery. The game's clues and methods for gathering them are also often glitched, such as here with this meditation bowl. Various NPCs' quests got crisscrossed in this zone and all screwed up. The result included being able to take a meditation bowl, place it, be told to come back to get a mysterious answer from an ephemeral, disturbing entity, and then it was just a bowl graphic that I couldn't interact with. Yet the game said I interacted with it and got a clue. Along the way, side characters were also lackluster and had similar problems. They just don't get enough depth to seem interesting. Glitches also make the choice on whether or not to save someone often feel lackluster too, which further makes the story feel flat. For example, towards the beginning of the game, I saved a character called Starlet, and she popped up later. But when she popped up later, she had dialogue replay from when she was in trouble in a different zone, back from when I had saved her.
A game deck? That's great. Yeah, I'm Starlet. I can't seem to log out.
I also saved some kids and opted to let a woman quietly fix a bad situation regarding those children, but again the game glitched. An email on my character's computer acted as if I chose the option that I chose, but the television newscast in my character's apartment acted as if I chose to cause public drama for that woman and the kids. Bugs like this were common. For example, I tried to be bad for a different choice. The game got similarly confused. In this instance, I chose to punish a teenager to see what would happen. He said he'd die, and I didn't think he would, but I never was updated on what happened to him, so it was possible. Sometimes the game indicated he had died, as he predicted he would, and that my character became a murderer. My character noted that she was guilty of murder. She compared what she did to having bashed his head in, murdering him. At other points, the game's text said I was peaceful and never hurt anyone, which had some consequences at a different part of the game. It couldn't make up its mind about whether or not the punishment dealt to the teenager was lethal. I also flat out shot somebody at another point, and again, it couldn't decide if what I did was lethal. The game also crashed rather often for me, 4 times over about 9.5 hours. It seemed as if any attempt at creativity, no matter how small, often just made the game crash and overheat. I eventually stuck to playing in a linear manner, going directly to where the game indicated I should go next, and stopped detouring around to check this thing or that thing. Doing this seemed to solve the crashing issue because I played for another 7 hours, but had 0 crashes after I chose to be a good little path follower. However, every crash that happened due to small moments of creativity, and that level of fragility was disappointing to me. I'll give 2 examples to explain what I mean about fragility due to trying out small moments of creativity, because what I tried really wasn't much, and thus shouldn't have caused any problems for the code. Here, I attempted to talk to a certain NPC before doing the next task on my quest line. That crashed the game. And here, I attempted to reinitiate a conversation after the NPC said we'd have to talk later. He said he was exhausted and would no longer speak with me for the time being. But I was able to talk to him again after all. Trying to cheekily ignore a possibly demented old man napping upright on a barrel crashed the game too. However, while it didn't crash again after that, after I started playing it in a straightforward way, I did get stuck at a later point and have to reload a save. It was a pretty glitchy game. I also didn't feel like playing it in a straightforward way was causing me to miss out on anything. There was never a point where I'd explored and found something cool that made me glad that I'd explored. Instead, trying something that seemed interesting either did nothing or just crashed the game. As I continued to play, I found that its problems continued to make it less and less enjoyable. There were many hints without depth, without substance, and those happened right up to the end. Unfortunately, going over that point in detail would be impossible without giving spoilers, because I'd mainly be referring to the underlying story and its flaws, and I'd prefer not to spoil the deeper mystery of the game for those who might still want to play it. So to balance this problem out, I'll be posting a plot summary as well at some point after this review goes up. Another reason I want to do this is that when there had been only a few hours left until I beat the game, then I hadn't wanted to finish Game Deck because I was so bored. But I did finish it because at that point I figured it wouldn't take too much longer to beat, and I couldn't find a good plot summary of it. I wanted to know in full what the underlying story behind the game had been, because while I had an idea, I knew I didn't have the full picture. I was hoping it would redeem some of the game's flaws. But the short answer here is that the reveal was a letdown. I learned that my choices in the game hadn't mattered much because there was a heavy amount of illusion when it comes to choices, and the lack of depth was so bad that when I tried to find out if there were any other endings, I found players wondering if there's a secret ending because they were unsatisfied with the endings too. I think this is due to the gameplay being weak. It leans heavily on its story to compensate for, well, how simple it is. As I said, I finished the game only because I was wondering how it'd tie up the various mysteries it set forth about the underlying story. And yet, unfortunately, the conclusion was unsatisfying for me. The tale seemed a bit lost in finding its way. The look and the sound. The game looks flashy and sounds good, but yet all of the effort on its aesthetics is, unfortunately, wrapped around a poorly constructed game. This definitely harms its overall look and feel. After all, one thing that stood out strongly to me while playing, among everything else about it, was that Game Deck seems sloppily made. Audio clips often play when they should not. Characters and scenes play out as if different choices were chosen by the player. The game often can't seem to remember if you're a male or female, and meanwhile, typos are so frequent that they're hard to ignore. At one point, there was even a big thing in caps that said not to translate something. What's especially odd about this is that most of the game's typos would have been caught by a spell checker. I'm guessing this means that one wasn't used during production, which indicates a high lack of polish to me, and an unnecessary lack at that. Compared to the cost of developing a game, I don't think that using a spell checker would have been a big deal. After all, I played many indie games over the years, and it's a struggle for me to try to think of any that were this consistently flawed in their writing. Since the game is highly text-based, this is an especially noticeable problem, and also a weird disappointment to see consistently in the game. To be fair though, on the typo point, Game Deck does provide language options other than English. As such, it might seem better or worse on that point in different languages. So if you played the game in another language, please drop a note in the comments and give your own thoughts on how it was in that language. I'm curious to know, and other people might be too. Cost and time. If you don't want to wait for a sale, then you'd be paying a lot more. Normally Definitive's about $30, on sale about $13.50. As for how long Game Deck takes to beat, I'd say around 14 hours for a leisurely pace and a bit longer if you want to reload saves to experiment with some options. Since I didn't know that the options were often pointless, I did play around with different choices and reload some saves, and took a little less than 16 hours total. Of course, if you rush it, you can go much faster, and I think playing it in a straightforward way is the best, easiest way to play it if you're gonna play it. And that would probably come in around 10 or 11 hours.